Today, I am joined by Eduardo Bucas, and we're going to talk a little bit about Netlify's new Vite plugin. Thanks for being here, Eduardo.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for you out there, if you're watching live, feel free to chat. We'll keep an eye on that and address any questions as they come in. But Eduardo, so we want to talk today and dig in a little bit to this new Netlify Vite plugin that we released just yesterday.
Hmm.
Um, I thought it'd be good to start by let's talk a little bit about um, why we released this plugin and then maybe some of how that ties into what has been Netlify's the Netlify development experience over the last many years.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think all developers will agree that having a good local development experience is uh, a key aspect when you're kind of creating an application. If you're using a platform like Netlify that gives you a lot of building blocks that unlock a lot of capabilities. We're talking functions and edge functions for your backend. We're talking blobs as your data storage solution, things like that. Um, those things are all available when you deploy your site to Netlify, but you kind of need to have those building blocks available locally when you are building your application because it doesn't make a lot of sense that you write your start writing your code or have your AI tools writing your code, and then you have to push that to production in order to see how those building blocks are being used. And so having sort of like a local emulation of the Netlify platform right in your laptop or your machine has always been a key aspect of the Netlify developer experience. And historically, that has always happened with the Netlify CLI. So if you install the Netlify CLI, you have this command called Netlify dev, which brings all of the Netlify platform right onto your local environment. And that is not going away. Like the Netlify CLI is still out there. We're continuously investing in it. But at the same time, we see a lot has changed in the front end ecosystem since we released the first version of the CLI. And one of the things that we see is that a lot of uh, frameworks and meta frameworks have started gravitating around sort of like a common set of tooling, and Vite is kind of um, the most kind of ubiquitous name across all of these frameworks, and it's an incredibly powerful tool chain. And and so we wanted to bring all of that power that Netlify primitives unlock right to the native local development experience that those frameworks give you. So if you use Astro, let's say, and your documentation points you to like, oh, you can run your site locally by running Astro Dev. We want to, you know, insert Netlify into that flow as opposed to saying, if you want to emulate the Netlify primitives, you need to, step aside from that native Astro local development flow and then to use the Netlify CLI instead. And so this is what the Vite plugin unlocks: is that if you have a vanilla Vite project that you create from scratch, or if you use a meta framework that leverages Vite, then the Netlify Vite plugin will bring all of the Netlify platform right into the local development flow that your framework kind of offers you, if you choose not to use the Netlify CLI.
Love that, and it leads me to so many questions and thoughts and ideas. But I feel like we should probably just dig in and show it, and then
Yeah,
those things will come up naturally.
let's do
All
it.
right, so I'm going to share my screen here. All right, great. So right here, I basically just have an empty directory, and I've got cursor pulled up in here. Do you how do you want to start with a prompt on the CLI? Where should we begin?
So I think we first of all need to decide, what are the what do we want to build this on. I think for simplicity purposes, it might be good to maybe start with a vanilla Vite project. Whether we want to use React or anything else, it's up to you. But I guess maybe starting with the command for bootstrapping a new Vite project, which I think is something like npm create Vite.
Yes, let's
Is
see
it?
here. I get this. All right, let me get you. There we go. There we go. Um, ooh, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you,
Oh, right,
yeah,
because
that's
we
it.
usually need to we need to pick our oh, we can just do this, right? npm
Yes.
create.
Yeah.
Yes, great.
If you
So you
do
don't need to
that,
pick the component framework at first either.
it will, yeah, it will ask you once you run that. I think it's going to be the first thing that, oh, yeah, you need to pick a
Great.
name.
Let's see. Okay. And you think
Yeah.
just keep it simple, or do you want to use a component framework?
Up to you. We can keep it simple if you want.
Let's do it. Okay. And actually, let's open this one. So we've got. All right, here we go. Now we're in our new project.
Cool. So now, one thing, the one step that we need to take in order to kind of do that process of bringing the Netlify platform into this project is to uh, npm install the Vite plugin. So in this case, it would be npm install at netlify/Vite plugin. And then the second thing that we'll need to do is in our Vite config, which we will need to create, we'll need to import this package that we've just installed and kind of declare the Netlify Vite plugin as something that we want to use in our application. This is something that, by
Okay.
the way, we are working on automating to, or like to creating some tooling around so that in a future release of our CLI, you'll be able to type a command that says add Vite and we'll do the job like installing the plugin and adding it to your config. But that's
It's
coming.
coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna presumably import from. Is there a
So I think if you go back to the docs, to the Vite docs, there's like an example of a Vite configuration file. Let me see. I mean, we can also ask Cursor actually to generate a Vite config. It should be able to do that. And we can also, okay. I don't think we need the server and build objects
Yeah,
like
it should those
properties,
should have
but
sensible defaults, I would think, right?
yeah. I'm curious if you ask it to import the at Netlify/Vite plugin, does it know how to do that?
let's try it. Let's try it.
Yep, that's it.
Well, look at that. Amazing. Amazing.
Nice. Okay.
All right.
So we can try um, just starting up the site and seeing if everything looks good so far.
All right. Open this. There we go.
Cool.
And yep,
Nice.
looks good. Looks
So
good.
right away, you can see in the terminal a couple of things. So you'll see as part of the kind of Vite output, a couple of log lines that come from the Netlify plugin. So we're telling you a couple of things. Um, One, like when you link your project to a Netlify site, which means if you already have a site created on the Netlify platform, you can link this project to that site such that any configuration, any environment variables that you set on your site will automatically be inherited and will be available in your project. And so we're in there, or we're already telling you that you can link your site and kind of guiding you through the process of doing it. Um, so it's kind of a way to know that okay, the the Netlify plugin is running and it's running correctly. So at this point, it's up to us to decide what we want to build, and we can then um, you know throw in a couple of Netlify primitives as we, you know, that makes sense. Like if we have any kind of data storage needs, we can, just use blobs and it should work. So that's what I mean by bringing the Netlify primitives to your local development environment. Is that just by running the Vite server, you can start adding a function, importing blobs, and it should all just work without any additional tooling.
Yes, and that's kind of where I was going to go after you gave us the background and the intro there, because it seems like you when you're starting up a new project, there's just like there's a lot of thought uh, that and research that often needs to go into what framework am I going to use and
Hmm.
why. And really, when you're getting started, I mean, especially if you're just trying to build up some sort of proof of concept or something like that, you often need to. I find myself at least looking at, well, what are the various features and patterns that each of these frameworks introduce, and is that
Hmm.
going to suit my needs, when really what ultimately matters is that those features exist in production.
Hmm.
And um, and so having this plugin available to me is like, well, by default, then I'll just start with Vite, build my little
Hmm.
proof of concept, and then if we need to expand from there, we
Yeah.
can expand from there.
Yeah. Totally.
So yeah, do you want to maybe we should show that in action to add either serverless function or integrate blobs or something like that?
Yeah, we can start maybe by adding a function, just to show that we put a function there. We set it to run on a specific URL path, and it just works. I think that would be a good first thing to show.
All right, let's see if Cursor can do this for us. So add a Netlify function that, what do you think we should have it return or do?
Um, hmm. I think maybe we can start with something just basic as like return a random number or something. I don't know. Is that too boring? That's
Well, we'll start there. We'll start
yeah.
there. And we're gonna. Oh, we're already tinkering with. We don't want to do this right now. Um, let's try this instead. Okay, so we're gonna add an item in .netlify slash
Can you?
functions.
Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting
It's,
that it decided to put the function inside the .netlify directory, which it should not, because the .netlify directory is like this internal, um, it's like internal thing that we need to create in order to kind of serve functions and build functions and other shenanigans. Um,
yeah,
so
we just want this
can
in. It's just Netlify slash functions, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So interesting. Interesting.
Can you also because another thing here is that it chose to create a function that uses the Lambda compatibility mode. So could we maybe ask it to use the I don't know what the best nomenclature is, like the V2 functions or the modern Netlify function syntax, and maybe also ask it to define a custom URL path?
Yep. 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 Uh, syntax for um,
Yeah.
all right, let's see if we can do it. You know what I've with Cursor in particular. You know, I know all of these different IDs today have varying ways that you can add context kind of just out of
Mm-hmm.
the box. And so what I typically do and didn't do here in Cursor is we'll take our LLMs.txt file and drop that in and into a Cursor rules file, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have a snippet in there which instructs Cursor to use that updated syntax. And
Yeah.
so, for folks who are out there watching, if you're using Cursor or Windsurf or any of these other tools that we have these rules files available for you in our documentation as well.
And there's also like a Netlify CLI command that you can run that will populate the project with all of those context files for you.
Ah, yes, yes.
Yep, that's it. That looks good.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, great.
So
And
now if we just access that path in the browser, it should,
and what was it? Was
live demo gods
API
permitting.
random number? Oh, I need to spell correctly. It's super small up here.
Huh. Is that the
Did
right?
I am I actually spelling correctly? All right.
Netlify functions, random number, that looks okay.
Do I need to restart the dev server?
You shouldn't need to. Okay, that is interesting. We can try restarting the server, but that shouldn't be needed. Okay.
Oh, I've got something here.
Okay, so it is picking up, but there's something.
Oh, because we have an error in
Okay.
here.
Can you try removing that? Because,
Oh,
can you
probably
try
because I'm
removing
not
that
using.
import?
It's because I'm not using or I didn't use the TypeScript extension here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
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 Well, it
So that's
works. It
interesting.
works.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, yeah, so basically what this shows us is that um, any route that you access on your site will be picked up normally by the Vite server, but that specific route that you've registered there will be handled by the Netlify Vite plugin, and it'll be rendered as a function.
Yes, and then and we won't go through the process today, but what I love about this is then once we if we were to package this up, create a GitHub repository, push to Netlify, or even just use the Netlify CLI to deploy,
Hmm.
um, that path also it returns the same result, or it has the
Hmm.
same
Hmm.
functionality, I should say,
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
in production as well. All right, well, great. I mean, I think that that kind of it gives us a taste for what this can really do. Is there anything that you feel like we missed that we should really highlight today? And if not, I was thinking maybe we could end on what are some of the things that you're thinking about that you really want to add in here next.
Hmm. So I think one of the things that is briefly mentioned there in the logs, but kind of makes a huge difference, or like is incredibly powerful when you're developing with Netlify, is that your environment variables, any environment variables configured for the site, are automatically pulled in. So in that function, imagine that you were, using sort of like an external API that needs like an access token, or you're connecting to a database and you have your connection string as an environment variable. So as soon as you kind of link your site, then you can just access the environment variables there. There's no no .n files that you need to kind of keep around. Like, everything just works. So I think that's super cool. In terms of things that we could add next, um, I think blobs is an incredibly powerful and fun primitive to work. So in this case, we could just very easily write some logic that, kind of generates a random number and kind of stores that in blobs. Why on earth would you want to store a random number on blobs? I don't know, but it just goes to show that you could just like import at netlify/blobs, create a store, and then just read and write data. And it'll, when you do that locally, it won't actually persist anything to any production service. Everything, all of the data just stays local to your project. But then as soon as you push that to production, then everything just works with kind of the production blobs engine, which is a really cool experience in my opinion.
Yes, yes, I've had I love tinkering with blobs, and especially because we it's so yeah, the random number generator is it's just kind of like a quick little example, but
Mhm.
what I love about the of blobs in particular is the flexibility that they come with, so that kind of like we're talking about here with this Vite plugin, that um you say, okay, well, I need to let users upload an image for their avatar, but I don't have any other needs for users to upload images, for example. So there's not really, it seems like unnecessarily complex to then go look for some robust image service or an uploading service, or whatever, or data storage service that you might want to use there. And so we can just start there and use that to both upload and serve the images, or could be data as well. Now, one thing I
Yeah.
was going to ask you was, you mentioned environment variables and also linking the site. So, here we started fresh, and if we already have an existing project, we've still, even with this plugin, simplified the development experience. Um, but yeah, if you're, I'm just curious to get your perspective. If you're starting a new project, um, and you're going to need environment variables, it seems like it would be really good to rely on the Netlify, um, on Netlify Dev,
Mhm.
but we need that site to exist first. So, what is your typical flow when you're creating a new project? Are you are you like immediately pushing to production and linking your local development instance?
That's a great question. It depends. Sometimes I go quite far without creating the site and just kind of running everything locally and not even having a repo. And then only when I want to like get the first feel for how this performs in production, only then I go through the motion of like creating the site and then linking it. Um, but added um, we've recently added a new command to the CLI, which is Netlify clone, I believe. Am I getting the name of the
Oh,
command right?
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Which kind of is a really cool way of kind of getting started, because you can, if you already have a repo, um, you can just kind of do that, and it kind of clones, it kind of sets everything up. So it really depends. It really depends on the project. Um, I think also because I work at Netlify, I kind of force myself to try different flows each time, just because I want to kind of, make sure that I'm familiarized with kind of the different ways of getting started. But I guess my go-to is I typically go quite far in just running everything locally, because I really trust the local emulation that the Netlify CLI and now this new flow give me. I really kind of trust that it emulates production correctly. So I go quite far in kind of just running it locally. And only then, when I want to share with someone, I kind of push it online.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then with this Vite plugin, um, is it only going to be relevant if we're using Vite directly, like we were today, or if someone is using, say, Astro? Um, would it also be relevant to how they're linking?
Yes. Yes. So there are actually different layers to this. So the Vite plugin itself will be relevant to anyone using Vite directly, like we're doing right now. That Vite plugin will also be used by meta frameworks such as Astro that rely on Vite. There's going to be some it really depends on how each of those frameworks are implemented. In some of those, there will be kind of some follow-up work that we will need to do to kind of integrate the plugin in those flows. For example, in the case of Astro, Astro has kind of the concept of adapters, and there is this Netlify adapter that you add to your Astro site if you want to deploy to Netlify. And there's going to be a release, I think, in the next few days that of the Netlify Astro adapter that pulls in the Vite plugin and kind of uses it automatically. So the plugin itself is either used directly or used as a dependency of these adapters for the various meta frameworks. So it's always kind of at the center of everything. In some cases, you use it directly. In other cases, you end up using it, via another dependency. Um, I also wanted to mention that there's like a third layer to this, which is um, the process that we went through for developing the plugin involved um, reinventing a lot the of this kind of local emulation of the Netlify platform. And what I mean by this is that historically, as I mentioned, all of this happened in the Netlify CLI, and the Netlify CLI is kind of mostly structured as this monolith where you run a command, and then all of these primitives become available to you as part of your local development server. But once you start, like if you want to use those same primitives to build the Vite plugin or to build any kind of customized local emulation experience for the Netlify platform, you kind of need to decouple those primitives from the CLI itself. And that's what we've done in order to build this Vite plugin. And so there's now a public repository called Netlify/primitives, and it's essentially a big monorepo with each of our primitives um, as a self-contained package that you can, let's say that you have an application, and as part of your application, you heavily rely on blobs for your data storage needs. And perhaps because of that, you want to have like a test suite that, you know, that that tests that interaction with blobs. But how do you bring blobs into your test suite? Well, you can now there's now a separate package that gives you all of the Netlify blobs behavior locally. So you can just pull that into test suite and use that. And the same for, the cache API, for functions, for edge functions. So I think this is also a really interesting way of like presenting our primitives and kind of the local emulation of our primitives that kind of gives developers the all the flexibility that they want. And it's all public open source. You can just go in there and take a peek and I think kind of learn a little bit more about how our primitives work under the hood, which I think can also be quite cool.
That's very cool. And that testing with blobs as an example is something that I hadn't thought about. That's a really interesting use case.
Yeah.
So for folks who would where this plugin will come into play when they're using meta frameworks, do you think is it mostly in um, well, maybe what I should say is the way that I've often thought about it is that there are all these different frameworks out there, and
Mm-hmm.
they each bring their own feature set. And then it's up to us at Netlify to make sure that we can basically cover all of those features across all those frameworks in production.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what these primitives have offered. And so when you have, say, this plugin makes its way into the Astro development server, um, you then get immediate access to, say, blobs, which
Mm-hmm.
otherwise isn't something that is kind of like a first class feature of Astro. Are there
Mm-hmm.
so there's like the primitives that the framework might not give you, you suddenly have access to. There's that you talked about the environment variables as well as something that now you have kind of you have one source of truth, consistent place to manage environment variables for all of your environments for your particular project. Are there any other benefits that we haven't mentioned that this plugin kind of unlocks in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the DX?
Yeah, I think you covered all of them, and to kind of to zoom in a little bit on the whole primitives versus framework features. You're right. Like at Netlify, we put a lot of effort in making sure that if you choose to reach for a feature that your framework offers, for example, actions in Astro, you can write an action, and when you deploy that to production, we will do the job of translating that into a function or an edge function so that the same behavior that you're seeing locally will exist in production. And this is not new. Like this is not new with the plugin. What's new is that first of all, we also give you the option to reach for Netlify primitives directly. In addition, that can easily coexist with your framework features. So I could totally imagine, writing an Astro site and in kind of using an action for certain things. But if I want to, have a way of um, maybe doing some personalization based on the user's location, for example, I could easily just drop an edge function in there. Not worry about how that like not worrying about finding a framework feature that would
Mm,
map to the requirements that I have. Like if I know that I'm using Netlify and I know that Netlify has this primitive that kind of gives me this functionality, I'm able to just drop this file there and use it locally and in production without kind of independently of my framework. So that's one thing that the plugin unlocks. Um, and then the other thing, or maybe it's kind of the same thing from a slightly different lens, is that um, even when you use a framework feature, that itself can also benefit from using certain building blocks that Netlify give you. For example, just the other day, I was building a site with Astro, and I was writing a server action that was making a bunch of API calls, a bunch of HTTP calls. And I wanted to make sure that those HTTP calls were properly cached so that I could deliver the best performance possible. And the Netlify Cache API is like a perfect tool for that. Um, and without having to leave the framework feature that I was interested in using, which was actions, I could just import the Netlify cache module and just write my logic. And
Oh,
because the plugin populates the environment with everything that is needed to make that caching primitive work locally, then it was like a seamless experience. I did not need to worry about anything else. I just import the module, write my caching logic according to the documentation. Everything works locally. Push it up, works in production. So I think I kind of see it as like blurring the lines in a good way between platform primitives and the framework features, and kind of giving you the power to decide when to use each one to kind of solve the problem that you want to solve.
yeah, that's super interesting. And that also then kind of brings up this question of where are you going to use this again, or how often are you going to use this? When, as you were talking about the edge function example, it made me think, well, yeah, that's a great example because that that feature is something that I could see you using on many different sites
Yeah.
and wanting the same exact behavior. But maybe your organization lets teams run super autonomously or independently, and for whatever reason they want to work within different frameworks, but you're all deploying to Netlify.
Hmm.
Then all of a sudden you can have that shared behavior,
Absolutely.
and you're kind of you're extracted from the framework. So yeah, lots of benefits and really interesting decisions that it's just more feels like more power that we're passing on to the developer here.
Totally.
Well, Eduardo, I feel like I could talk about this forever. I appreciate you spending time with me today to walk us through this new Vite plugin and showing us how it works.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that's it for our office hour session today. I'm going to be back here again tomorrow at, let's see, local time for me is 3 p.m. That's Eastern time, 12 p.m. Pacific time in the States. And we're going to talk about another new Netlify feature. So I will see you back here tomorrow.